Hey guys, this is IX with the Rollout Reviews, bringing you another S.H.Figuarts review. This time it is the Shinkochu Seiho Masked Rider Kuuga Mighty Form Renewal. That's a little bit of a mouthful. Anyway, we're going to start off by taking a quick look at the packaging. Like always, we'll set him off to the side here really quick, and it's pretty much the standard Shinkochu Seiho packaging. We're used to seeing Masked Rider Kuuga there and shiny letters on the side, S.H.Figuarts, and then of course you have the picture of Kuuga himself, a couple of shots at the back. Now, inside, you can see it slides open as usual here. Inside you have the standard trays here, one for the figure and one for the accessories. But it is lacking the concept book that the past two releases have had. I guess they just realized that was sort of a waste of paper. Now here is the figure itself, and before we go any further, I did sort of want to compare it to the original, because while I didn't have the original Kabuto when that figure came out, I do have the original Kuuga. So we'll get these first impressions out of the way, just like this. As you can see, it's a little bit better. Now, there still is some kind of charm that I can't explain about this original figure that sort of still makes me like it, but it goes without saying that the new figure is a vast improvement as far as the colors, the details, and proportions go. It sort of makes this original one look like a kid in a Halloween costume. A very tall and thin kid in a not-so-good Halloween costume. Now let's take a closer look at some of the finer details of this figure. Starting with the armor, it's more of a candy red rather than a cherry red, and that's very nice. It's much more accurate to the show. I also find it captures the texture of his armor pieces on screen really well. What I mean by that is from some angles it looks very shiny, from other angles it looks very flat just because of the way light hits it. It's very nice and it definitely works. Now the red is a little bit different on his cuffs here. This is a different plastic. I think it's also painted over the gold. It's not quite as shiny, a little bit more matte. That difference in texture might be accurate to the show. I can't be entirely sure, but it definitely is there. There's definitely a difference between those two reds. Now, let's take a look at the head and work our way down. The crest is made of a solid plastic this time around, rather than that weird rubbery stuff, which is expected and a lot nicer. The gold color is sort of a more champagne gold, rather than that weird cheesy yellowy gold, which I didn't really like all that much. He's got the jewel on his forehead there. The compound eyes are done up a lot better this time around. They're much more dense, much more detailed, and shaped a lot better. I also find that very similar to the armor from some angles, just because of the way light hits it. They look like solid red eyes, and from other angles you can definitely see the compound effect, very much like the helmet in the show. Now the collar here still has the fine grongi details across it, but it's much more accentuated, much thicker, much higher up, a little bit more accurate to the show. The shaping of his shoulder pads is much less rounded and bulbous, more ovular, and fits to his arm a bit better, which is nice to see. He also has a couple of little details below the arm for the undersuit, just like all of the other Shinkochu Seiho figures. Now he does have a slightly more metallic red piece down below here. This is actually a separate piece, and we'll take a look at how this works a little bit better when we show off the articulation, but there's plenty more grongi details on this piece. It's a little bit difficult to line it up, I find, but yeah, you can see there all those nice little details. The belt looks phenomenal. It's got a lot more like black panel lines to accentuate a lot of the details, whereas the other figure was lacking those a fair bit. It's also a little bit more squished, a little bit more compact, which is much more accurate to the show. There you have the little fan jewel in the center, all little colors there, grongi symbols on the side here. He still has a tramp stamp here. Well, it's a little bit higher up this time, but it's also much less, well, unfortunate. He has some ab detailings there as well. Not nearly as cartoonish as the first figure, though. Now, there just isn't something right with his hips. I can't put my finger on it, but they definitely look a bit weird. And again, when we get to the articulation, I'll explore this a bit more, but I don't know. They just look a little bit thin, a little bit close to the body. Again, I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's definitely something off with the hips. His legs are very simple. Much more of a matte finish on the undersuit than the original figure, which, again, is nice to see. All the contours that look very natural are there. You have some more gold here, and some more gold here on the ankles. Something worth mentioning is that the little jewels on his cuffs and on his ankles here are no longer painted details. They're actually translucent plastic, and when the light hits those just right, looks great. Looks fantastic. It just adds so much more depth to this figure for such a small detail. The feet are no longer metal, of course, but all the details are there. Towards the bottom, he does actually have that Grongi symbol, whereas it was lacking on the first figure, and some simple details towards the bottom there. So overall, just a much more accurate figure. Like I said, the proportions are fantastic. This guy looks like he jumped right out of the screen. As for articulation, just like all of the other figures in this subline, he has a full proportion neck while still retaining an extremely wide range of movement. So that is very, very cool. The shoulders are done up very nicely here. The shoulder pads get out of the way while still looking very nice and covering up all of the gaps. It does have a shoulder roll here. The shoulder pad itself is on a double hinge. However, if you bring it down like this, the shoulder itself does look a little bit scrawny, but of course that is the price to pay. Rotation here, bends at the elbow, rotates at the cuff. It's got a ball joint and a hinge at the wrist. Now there's some really cool things going on with the ab section here. His waist actually extends a lot further than most figures with this feature, and that's to accommodate the handful of poses that Kuuga is known for, where he's sort of crouched down. So this is what it looks like when it's completely squeezed in. You can pull it out that far, which is just crazy. As I mentioned earlier, this whole section here also collapses underneath the armor, so you can do some really wild things that the original figure just wishes it could do. This is extremely helpful. Now, I mean, of course, you have a ball joint down below here, so he's got the rotation. The belt is actually a separate piece this time around. Now let's talk about his hips. As I said earlier, there's just something about them that doesn't look right when they're down like this. They do look fine when they're out. Maybe there's a little bit of extra space here. I don't know. Something just looks off. My least favorite part about this figure is the range that these have. I'm not entirely satisfied. They go forward that far. Well, that's fine. They go back only that far. Again, that's fine. They do only go out this far. Now, my least favorite part, all of that is fine so far, is the fact that they rotate that far, but they can't rotate in at all. The way it's molded up here doesn't allow that, unfortunately. On top of that, if you bring him up like this for a rider kick, there's kind of this ugly gap right there in the plastic, which just doesn't seem right, you know? All of these Shinkochu Seiho figures so far, the other two in the line, did a really great job at making the articulation look supernatural with not a whole lot of breaks, but that just doesn't follow suit, unfortunately. And it's a shame that it's that pose which is affected by it, because it's Kuuga. He's gonna do a fair bit of rider kicking. His knee bends super far there. His ankle has that much tilt. Goes forward and back super far. This cuff does get in the way when moving him back like this, but It's not too bad. It can be a little bit scary because I'm not sure how thin this plastic is, but I can just hope that it won't split if I try forcing this too far. And then he's got the toe, of course. So his articulation is great. For the most part, it's really natural, really expressive. But those hips do cause some problems, I find, and that limitation in the ankle can be a little bit annoying in some poses. So yeah, he's great. He looks great, he poses well, but there are a couple of things that just fall short. For accessories, he has nothing but replacement hands, which is completely fine. He doesn't need anything else in mighty form. He's got a couple of closed fists. He has some very calm, nonchalant hands, which work really well for his rider kick pose. He has his signature Cho Henshin pose hands with a couple of fingers up. He has his single thumbs up hand, which is always a lot of fun, and replacing his full-on rage hands from the original figure, he has these, well, still calm, open palm hands, which are very versatile. These work really well for his poses both before and after his rider kick, much like this one. Like I said, they can work for a lot of poses. These are possibly my favorite hands that this guy comes with. All in all, this subline of Figuarts continues to knock it out of the park. In my book, all three releases have been home runs. Is he perfect? No. He's got his fair share of little problems, just like all of the rest, but in reality its limitations are nothing compared to the ones the first Figuarts Kuuga had, so I can't complain too much. They set out to design a better Kuuga for your collection, and that's exactly what they did. If you like the suit design and want a Kuuga on your shelf, this is the one to get. If you already have the original release, it's definitely worth considering an upgrade to this one, but that's for you to decide. Hopefully this review helped you make that decision. So that is about it, guys, and this is IXRoll@IX, signing off.